Sometimes God blesses you not to elevate your voice, but to deepen your silence. Many ask Him for increase, but few prepare their spirit for the weight of favor. If you cannot be still when the blessing comes, the blessing will control you instead of serve you. When money comes from God, key and DRP quiet. Let the noise be in heaven. Let the wisdom remain in your spirit. Because what is given by God must be stewarded with honor, not celebrated with pride. If the blessing makes you loud, you were not ready for it. But if the blessing brings you to your knees in quiet worship, heaven trusts you again and again. There are moments when God hides His strongest vessels, not because they are weak, but because they are dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. The world celebrates noise. Heaven rewards silence. A tree bearing heavy fruit bows lower. Blessing should bend you in humility, not lift you and bowed head in arrogance. When the Lord increases you, guard your heart. People will watch. Some will admire. Some will envy. Many will test you. Stay still. The truly blessed do not argue. They do not boast. They do not announce. They simply rise. And the world eventually sees what God has already declared and are read. Your victory does not need volume. It needs vision. Your abundance does not need applause. It needs assignment. Many fall not because they failed to receive wealth, but because they failed to remain detached from it. When your emotions are tied to what you own, you will fear losing it. But when your spirit is tied only to God, you will never fear anything leaving your hands. What flows from heaven has a guardian in heaven. No one can steal what God Himself delivered. Detached from people's approval, detached from fear of losing things, detached from the pressure to prove yourself. The moment you stop needing validation, you rise into spiritual authority. Power belongs to the quiet soul. Strength belongs to those who do not panic when the world shakes. Confidence belongs to those whose identity is anchored in divine purpose, not material gain. Sometimes God tests you by giving, not taking. Be it that blessing reveals your heart more than trials ever will. Can you receive and remain humble? Can you prosper and remain obedient? Can you rise and still stay hidden beneath His hand? Wealth is safe in the hand that worships. Promotion is safe in the heart that bows. Favor multiplies in the life that refuses to boast. Do not be attached to what you cannot carry into eternity. Hold riches lightly. Hold purpose tightly. Money is a tool. God is the source. If money becomes your identity, you lose both. But if God remains your identity, you will be entrusted with more than you ask for, more than you imagine, more than you can ever count. So when the blessing comes, be silent. When doors open, be humble. When increase arrives, stand still inside and give thanks. Let the world wonder how you rise. Let your silence preach louder than your achievements. Let your peace speak louder than your pee. And let your spirit remain untouchable, confident, anchored in the one who never changes. To the soul that does not cling to blessings, blessings never leave. To the heart that stays quiet before God, heaven stays open. Rise in purpose, walk in stillness, prosper in humility. And remember what and the blessing is truly from God. Noise is unnecessary. Silence is the language of the mature. Wisdom is the companion of the humble. And favor rests forever on the heart that cannot be moved. Now breathe and stay still. The blessing has already begun. Liti must increase. The loud heart loses what the quiet spirit protects. To understand this, you must first understand the nature of heaven. God never shouts to prove His power. The wind whispers His presence. The mountains bow in silence. Creation does not applaud itself, yet its glory fills the earth. When God moves, He does not make noise, He manifests evidence. And those who are truly touched by Him walk in the same spirit. They do not need to announce the blessing. The blessing announces them. through character, peace, and fruit that cannot be faked. Many people dream of being blessed, but blessing is not soft. It carries divine weight. It tests pride. It exposes motives. It reveals whether your heart is grounded in God or inflated by temporary gain. The humble soul survives the increase because humility is a shield. It hides you from the traps that come with success. But a loud heart, one that wants to show, to prove, to display beyond becomes vulnerable. A loud heart desires attention, applause, recognition, and that desire becomes the doorway where spiritual strength leaks out and pride quietly enters. When heaven trusts you with increase, protect it with silence, not because you fear losing it, but because you honor its source. A person who truly understands where a blessing comes from does not need to trumpet it. They simply bow and walk. Confidence does not shout. Assurance does not brag. Faith does not need validation. There are blessings you will only keep if you can stay quiet. There are breakthroughs that require you to be invisible, to let God reveal you in His time. Sometimes what destroys destiny is not the enemy, it is the noise of your own ego. Humility is not weakness, it is spiritual intelligence. It understands that not every miracle must be public, not every victory must be explained, not every new level must be displayed. Silence is not emptiness, it is spiritual maturity preparing for divine stability. Pride makes noise, but grace works in peace. Think of the seed in the ground. It grows in silence, hidden, unseen. When it emerges, the world recognizes its strength. So it is with those favored by Detachment. If you grow before you are rooted, the wind will break you. But if you remain humble and rooted, time will reveal you. You do not need to hurry your emergence. The world will see what God has planted. True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of God more than yourself. It is knowing that promotion comes from Him, not effort alone. It is understanding that wealth and success are assignments, not trophies. When your heart honors God above the blessing, God can increase you beyond measure, because He knows you will not worship what He gives, you will worship who gives it. Under your hand, you become quiet, you become spiritually alert. You hear God's guidance, you sense danger before it appears, you see through intentions, you recognize divine timing. Noise outside creates noise inside. Silence outside strengthens the voice of God inside. And the quiet spirit walks safely in ions, relationships, opportunities, and transitions. There will be people who question your silence. They will wonder why you do not announce every step, why you do not broadcast your progress. Smile. Let them wonder. Some things are not for public consumption. Some victories are sacred. You are no TTRT hiding the blessing, you are honoring it. And remember this, God does not elevate you to prove something to others. He elevates you to complete His purpose through you. The more He gives, the more your posture should be gratitude, not announcement. Every blessing is a responsibility. Every elevatio detachment is an assignment. Every breakthrough is stewardship. The loud heart loses what the quiet spirit protects. So stay humble, walk softly, let heaven speak for you. And when people ask how you rose so quietly, tell them power does not need noise. Grace does not need applause. And everything God gives is safest in the hands of the humble. True prosperity begins not when you receive wealth, but when wealth no longer owns your emotions. Many people believe that abundance starts the moment they obtain what they prayed for. They think prosperity begins when money enters their hands, when doors open, when status rises, when opportunities come. But true prosperity is not measured by what you possess. True prosperity is measured by what no longer possesses you. If your peace rises and falls with your bank account, then money is your master. If your confidence grows only when people notice your CKBRS, then validation is your God. If your joy depends on possessions, then your heart is still impoverished no matter how much you hold. God's purpose is not to fill your hands first, He fills your spirit. When your spirit becomes rich, your life will follow. But when life increases before your spear, it matures. You risk drowning in the very blessing you asked for. Heaven's wealth is given first in understanding, humility, discipline, patience, and faith. Earthly wealth is only trusted to those who can carry it without their soul trembling. When you no longer fear loss, when money can leave your hand without shaking your heart, when you can have abundance, yet remain unmoved, then you are prosperous. True prosperity is emotional freedom. It is spiritual composure. It is the quiet assurance that what God gives, He sustains, and if He removes, He replaces with better. This is why some people reimburse and fall. Quickly, they held wealth, but wealth held them tighter. The blessing came, but their spirit was still insecure. So they clung, they feared, they guarded with anxiety. And fear is the enemy of divine increase. What you fear losing, you cannot freely steward. What you worship, you cannot control. What you chase emotionally, eventually become enslaved to. God sometimes delays increase, not because you are unworthy, but because He loves you too much to let blessings break you. He waits until your heart no longer depends on what He will give, but rests only in who He is. That is matu and ibarity. That is spiritual wealth. That is freedom. When you do not depend on money for identity, you lead money instead of being led by it. When you no longer need applause, God can trust you to stand in places where applause may be loud, but loneliness may be louder. Emotional independence from material and all things is the foundation of spiritual strength. A person whose peace is rooted in God cannot be shaken by circumstances, scarcity, criticism, or abundance. When you see someone who is calm in both lack and plenty, honor them, they have mastered prosperity. When you see a soul that stays steady in storms and in victory, they have touched a deeper reality than wealth can offer. Their treasure is not in hands, but in heart. And the enemy fears such a person because nothing can control them. Blessing does not distract them. Pressure does not break them. Loss does not destroy them, because their identity never lived in things, it lived in God. There are people who lose everything and rise again stronger, because their source was never what left. There are people who gain everything and still feel empty, because they thought success could replace God's presence. But peace is the greatest wheel. Purpose is the greatest success, and alignment with heaven is the greatest security. When you reach the place where wealth cannot intimidate you and lack cannot humiliate you, you have entered true prosperity. You walk through life confident, not because of what you hold, but because of who holds and harness you. Then blessings come naturally. Wealth follows peace. Increase follows purpose. Opportunity follows obedience. When you no longer chase money, money finds assignment through you. When you no longer grasp for approval, God positions you before the right eyes at the right time. When you no longer need things to feel capable, you become capable of receiving things without losing yourself. True prosperity is not having everything. It is needing nothing outside of God to be at peace. It is the quiet joy that remains regardless of condition. It is the strength to rise with or without applause. It is the freedom to give without fear, to let go without panic, to rise without pride. That is divine wealth. That is spiritual maturity. And that is the kind of prosperity heaven trusts forever. Emotional detachment is not the absence of desire. It is the mastery of desire. So that purpose remains greater than possession. Some believe detachment means indifference, as though the spiritual person cares for nothing and feels nothing. But true spiritual detachment is not a cold heart. It is a disciplined heart. It is not emotionless. It is emotion governed. It is not the rejection of blessings. It is the refusal to be ruled by them. To detach emotionally is not to lose passion. It is to place passion under divine command, so that your calling stays stronger than your craving. When God gives you vision, He also gives you passion. Passion is holy when it bows before purpose. But passion becomes dangerous when it outruns wisdom. When it begins to pull you faster than God is moving. When it begins to shape your identity instead of serving your destiny. Many do not fail because they had no vision. They failed because they were too emotionally attached to the outcome, to the applause, to the speed, and the D&D, to the feeling of progress. They chase the fire but forget the altar. They chase the crown but forget the cross. They want blessing, but they also want control. And where control exists, surrender cannot breathe. Detachment does not mean you stop caring for outcomes. It means you stop being controlled by them. When you detach, you say, I will do my part. I will give my best. I will sow faithfully, and I will trust God with the results. When you detach, you protect your peace from circumstances. You protect your joy from fluctuation. You protect your purpose from distraction. For the emotionally attached believer, success becomes a necessity, not a calling. But for the spiritually grounded believer, success is a tool, never a master. Detachment is freedom in disguise. It frees you from proving yourself. It frees you from needing to be seen. It frees you from the suffocating pressure of constant achievement. It frees you from the anxiety of comparison. It frees you from fear of losing what God gave you, because what God gives, only obedience sustains. And what obedience sustains, fear cannot steal. The detached heart says, if I have it, praise God. If He removes it, praise God still. That heart cannot be broken. That soul cannot be owned. That spirit cannot be manipulated. Life will try to attach you to opinions, to possessions, to people, to emotions. The more attached you are, the more fragile you become. But the more surrendered you are, the more untouchable you become. It or me. The world fears losing, heaven fears clinging. For what you cling to controls you. And what you give to God returns in multiplied form, purified and protected. Many pray for blessing, but few pray for self-mastery. Yet without emotional mastery, blessing becomes burden. Without inner strength, abundance becomes a storm. You do not prepare for wealth by collecting information, you prepare by strengthening your spirit. You learn to let go without grieving identity. You learn to win without losing humility. You learn to stay steady, whether doors open or stay shut. That's stability. Power. That stillness is strength. That maturity is prosperity. A detached spirit is not careless. It is surrendered. It still loves deeply, but it does not idolize. It still hopes boldly, but it does not panic. It still plans wisely, but it releases the outcome. And in that release, it walks into favor. Doors owe important pen for the unburdened heart. Blessings gravitate to the uncluttered soul. God trusts the life that has loosened its grip on everything except Him. When your emotions no longer run ahead of your spirit, you become anchored. Emotional detachment is simply spiritual anchoring. You stop reacting and instinctively start discerning. You stop chasing and start receiving. You stop fearing loss and start expecting grace. In this posture, nothing comes before God, not blessing, not relationships, not opinions, not outcomes, not dreams, not fear. Desire is powerful, but desire surrendered to God becomes destiny. Emoti and tiboran is powerful, but emotion submitted to God becomes discernment. Passion is powerful, but passion purified by God becomes unstoppable purpose. Detachment does not reduce your fire, it refines it. It transforms desire into devotion, ambition into assignment, striving into obedience. True greatness is not measured by how tightly you hold things, but by how lightly you can release them and still walk forward with peace. When you detach, you don't lose power, you discover it. You don't lose passion, you purify it. And you don't lose blessing. You make room for blessings that carry no sorrow, blessings that do not weaken your spirit, blessings that God Himself protects because they do not compete with His throne in your heart. To the surrendered soul, nothing is ever lost. Everything surrendered is transformed. Everything released is replaced by something higher. That is the beauty of divine detach and abandonment. When nothing owns you, God can trust you with everything. God's treasures rest safely in the hands of those who do not chase applause, validation, or noise, only His will. There is a realm of blessing that cannot be entered by ambition and cannot be achieved by effort alone. It is a realm reserved for those whose hearts are not intoxicated by praise, whose spirit does not need to be seen to feel significant, whose identity does not crumble without attention. Heaven does not reward the loud, heaven rewards the faithful, the hidden, the disciplined, the inwardly anchored soul. Divine favor is not fragile, it is sacred. And God will not place what is sacred into hands hungry for human approval. In a world obsessed with visibility, God observes silence. When crowds clap, heaven watches motive. When people cheer, heaven studies the heart. There are voices that rise because of marketing, and there are voices that rise because of anointing. The first burns quickly, the second endures storms, envy, seasons, time, and testing. The one who chases applause becomes a prisoner of applause, but the one who chases God becomes a vessel of heaven. There is nothing weaker on a soul that needs constant recognition. Such a person may appear confident on the outside, but inside they tremble with insecurity. They adjust themselves to please others. They panic when unnoticed. They feel threatened when others rise. But the soul anchored in God stands untouched by opinions. Applause does not inflate them. Criticism does not reduce them. Silence does not disturb them. Their validation is internal, spiritual, eternal, rooted in God's whisper, not man's voice. Heaven watches what excites you. Does blessing excite you more than obedience? Does applause feel heavier than calling? Are you more absorbed by who notices than by what God says? If your heart trembles at human approval, you are still not ready for divine responsibility, for there will come seasons when God promotes you and hides you at the same time, promotes you in spirit, hides you from crowds. Why? Because capacity must grow before NDRRE spotlight arrives. And spotlight without spiritual capacity destroys. The truly mature do not rush exposure. They know that anything birthed before time collapses under its own weight. They do not compete or compare, they cultivate and grow. They understand that God will elevate in His timing not to impress the world, but to fulfill purpose. The loud soul hurries, the wise soul waits. The loud soul fears being forgotten, the wise soul fears missing God. Noise is the enemy of discernment. Applause can drown out instruction. Attention can blind vision. When your heart feeds on admiration, you will compromise to keep it. But when your heart feeds on God, you cannot be bribed by approval or manipulated by attention. True power is not in being seen, it is in being sent. Some rise because they worked hard, others rise because heaven breathed over their obedience, and no human hand can shut a door God Himself opens. Emotional detachment protects destiny. Spiritual quietness protects power. When you are no longer moved by praise or shaken by silence, you have entered maturity. When you no longer need crowds, you are ready for calling. When you no longer crave spotlight, you are ready for responsibility in the spirit. Silence is strength. Hiddenness is preparation. privacy is protection. Destinies built in noise collapse. Destinies birthed in silence endure. There is a holiness in staying unseen until God reveals you. Seeds do not complain underground. They do not beg to be noticed. They focus on rooting deeply so they can withstand wind later. Likewise, God buries you not to hide you, but to anchor you. You are not forgotten, you are planted. And when you rise, it will not be fragile. It will not be shallow. It will not be premature. It will be God, unmistakably God. To chase a bobart and applause is to chase shadows nothing satisfies. But to chase God is to chase eternity. Every step fills the soul. And when heaven sees that you want Him more than what He can give, that you serve purpose over recognition, that you value calling above audience, then favor becomes why. Our companion and D and bar doors open simply because purity unlocked them. Remember, applause fades, crowds shift, admiration evaporates. But the will of God stands eternal. Seek the eternal. Hold loosely what is temporary. Let nothing steal your attention from the one who breathes life. Detach from noise so you can hear direct antapantantan. Detach from praise so you can walk in purity. And when God chooses to lift you, no one will question it, for the evidence will not be in words, but in the weight of heaven resting upon you. In the end, the greatest victory is not the wealth you gather, the titles you obtain, or the applause you receive. The greatest victory is the mastery of your own spirit, when you can rise without pride, receive without noise, give without fear, and walk in blessing without being owned by blessing. True power is not loud, it is steady. True success is not in possession, it is in peace. True prosperity is not measured in things, it is measured in who you become when things enter your life. Heaven is not impressed by what you hold, it is moved by how you hold it. If your hands are full, but your heart is empty, you have gained nothing. But if your spirit is full, even when your hands are empty, you lack nothing. For God Himself becomes your security, your provider, your identity, your source, your strength. Let the world chase noise, choose silence. Let others seek attention, seek presence. Let many cling to wealth, cling to God. What you surrender for His sake is never lost, what you give to Him. Chew and DRNS, refined, purified, multiplied, and what you protect with humility, He will protect with His hand. So walk quietly into your blessing. Carry your destiny with reverence. Let peace be your language and stillness your strength. Keep your heart pure, your spirit anchored, your motives clean, your PU and DRPO sacred. And remember always, when favor comes from heaven, humility must be your covering. When God elevates you, bow lower. When He increases you, speak less. When He trusts you with much, stay hidden in Him. For those who cannot be moved by gain or shaken by loss, those who desire God more than board and glory, those who remain humble when lifted and faithful when hidden, these are the ones heaven trusts, protects, and multiplies again and again. You are not rising by noise. You are rising by grace. You are not sustained by applause. You are sustained by assignment. Stay quiet. Stay obedient. Stay surrendered. The blessing has already begun, and nothing can stop what God has chosen to release over a heart that rests only in Him.